As Marcus Aurelius reminds us in his Meditations, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The world will always present obstacles, but it is our response to them that shapes our virtue. It is not about disengaging from the world or retreating into apathy, for that would be contrary to the Stoics' duty to the common good. The key to living a virtuous life is not to turn away from the suffering of others, nor to ignore the injustices of society, but to focus our efforts on what is within our power and influence, while recognizing that we are bound to a larger, interconnected whole. The Stoics believed that justice, the act of giving each their due, is the most fundamental of all virtues, for without it, all other virtues falter. Courage, when applied to an unjust cause, is nothing more than recklessness. Discipline, when directed towards selfish aims, becomes mere rigidity. And wisdom, if not guided by justice, can lead us astray. Seneca warns us, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." We must ask ourselves, in what cause are we directing our energy? Is it a cause that benefits the whole, or is it driven by ego, by self-interest, by the fleeting desires of the moment? As Lord Byron wisely said, the cause makes all that hallows or degrades courage in its fall. The Stoics are not concerned with the courage to stand for the sake of standing, but the courage to stand for what is right, for what promotes the common good, for what is just. Justice, according to the Stoic philosophers, is not limited to personal acts of fairness or morality. It extends beyond the individual to the greater society, for we are all members of one common body. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote of our shared responsibility to one another. What is not good for the swarm, neither is it good for the bee. We are not solitary beings, isolated from the rest of the world. We exist in concentric circles, as Hierocles, the Stoic philosopher, described. At the center of these circles is the self, but radiating outward is the family, the community, the city, the nation, and ultimately, all of humanity. Our work as human beings is to continually expand the circles of our concern, pulling them inward, until the well-being of every person, no matter how distant or different, is as dear to us as our own. To neglect the suffering of others, to turn a blind eye to injustice simply because it does not touch our immediate lives, is to fail in our duty as rational and virtuous beings. Consider the example of John F. Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy, who, during his time as the U.S. ambassador to the United Kingdom, sympathized with the rise of Nazism, believing Hitler's power to be unstoppable. His inaction, his refusal to speak out against the horrors of the regime, became a moral stain that tainted his legacy. Kennedy's famous words, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing," though often misquoted, resonate with a truth that echoes through the centuries. It is not enough to simply stand aside and claim neutrality in the face of moral crises. To do so is to fail in our duty to justice, to the common good, and to the higher virtues that bind us all. In these modern times, it is tempting to withdraw into our own lives, to focus solely on our personal affairs, and ignore the broader issues that affect the collective. We may think that by remaining neutral, by choosing not to take sides, we can avoid conflict and preserve our peace. But as Marcus Aurelius reminds us, what is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. The Stoic knows that there is no true peace to be found in indifference, for indifference is a denial of our shared humanity. Justice compels us to care, to act, to speak out against wrongs, even when they do not directly affect us. As Seneca wisely said, "A good character is not made by the benefits we receive, but by the use we make of them." We must look beyond ourselves and our own narrow circumstances, for the world is filled with suffering, and we are duty-bound to help alleviate it wherever we can. Stoicism, founded by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BCE and developed by prominent figures such as Seneca, Epictetus, and the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, offers a timeless framework for navigating the complexities of human existence. In an age of superficial connections, fleeting pleasures, and perpetual distractions, the Stoic approach offers a sanctuary of mental resilience, clarity, and inner peace. At the heart of Stoicism lies a central truth. We cannot control the external events that happen in our lives, but we have complete dominion over how we respond to them. This realization is liberating, as it frees us from the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable and allows us to focus on the only true source of power, the mind and our internal state. Stoicism teaches that while we cannot avoid hardship, suffering, or the inevitable twists and turns of life, we can cultivate a mindset that allows us to face these challenges with composure, wisdom, and strength. One of the most profound teachings of Stoicism is the understanding that suffering is not the problem itself, but rather how we interpret and react to it. According to the Stoics, life is filled with obstacles, misfortune, and adversity, but it is our perceptions and judgments that transform these events into sources of distress. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflects on how external events are neither good nor bad in themselves. They only acquire meaning when we give them our judgment. This insight invites us to reconsider our habitual responses to life's difficulties, empowering us to meet them with equanimity and calmness, rather than frustration, anger, or fear. The Stoic mantra, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters," encapsulates this idea. Our peace of mind, the Stoics argue, comes not from manipulating the world around us to fit our desires, but from mastering our responses to the world as it is. This is the core of Stoic practice, the cultivation of a deep inner sense of tranquility that is unshaken by external circumstances. The Stoics did not see adversity as an enemy to be fought, but as an opportunity for growth, transformation, and the development of virtue. Virtue, for the Stoics, is the highest good. Unlike the pursuit of pleasure or material wealth, which are transient and often lead to dissatisfaction, virtue is seen as something that can be cultivated and perfected through deliberate action. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues that are essential to a flourishing life: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Wisdom is the ability to discern what is within our control and what is not, and to make choices that align with nature and reason. Courage is the strength to face fear and endure hardship with resilience. Justice involves acting with fairness, integrity, and compassion towards others. Temperance is the practice of self-control, of regulating our desires and impulses, so that we are not slaves to our passions. Together, these virtues form the foundation of a life lived with purpose and meaning. The Stoics believed that by aligning ourselves with these virtues, we not only live a life of integrity and authenticity, but also achieve true happiness, not the fleeting, external kind that comes from wealth, fame, or pleasure, but the deeper, more enduring kind that comes from living in accordance with reason and virtue.